At 1:39 in the afternoon, a metallic roar tore through the sky over Ahmedabad. A Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner had just taken off bound for London, but it never arrived. In a matter of minutes, the hopes of 242 people vanished in a column of black smoke that still shakes the entire world. What was supposed to be just another flight turned into a tragedy that no one will ever forget. June 13, 2025. Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel International Airport, Ahmedabad, India. The sun beats down hard on the runway, but the sky is clear. The weather conditions are optimal. At the boarding gate, 230 passengers are getting ready to begin their journey to London Gatwick on flight AI171, an Air India Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner. Among them are families going to visit loved ones, students returning for the semester, and professionals crossing continents for work commitments. None of them can imagine that they are just minutes away from being part of one of the most heartbreaking air tragedies in India's recent history. The commander in charge is Captain Sumeth Savarwal, a pilot with over 9,000 flight hours, respected for his precision and composure. By his side is First Officer Clive Kunder, young but with an impeccable record. Both greet each other in the cockpit, go over protocols, and check the systems. The Dreamliner is full, with 242 people on board, 230 passengers and 12 crew members, including 10 flight attendants. At 1:39 p.m. local time, flight AI171 is cleared for takeoff. The plane accelerates down the runway with grace. The nose lifts up. The fuselage leaves the ground. A collective sigh blends with the thrust of the engines. The Boeing 787 begins its initial climb. Everything seems normal for a few seconds. But then, something happens, something that breaks the silent routine of the cockpit. Just 2 minutes after takeoff, a chilling transmission is heard, filled with tension. Mayday, Mayday, Air India 171. Emergency on board. The words cut through the frequency like a scalpel. The tone is serious, restrained, but with an underlying urgency that can't be hidden. No one else speaks. The control tower tries to get more information, but contact with the aircraft is lost almost immediately. Just 5 kilometers from the airport, in a densely populated residential area called Meghani Nagar, residents report a brutal crash, a metallic roar followed by a dull thud and an explosion that stains the sky with black smoke. Images start circulating on social media. A cloud rising like a shadow over the city, flames in the middle of the street, screams, shattered glass, and a silence afterward that's impossible to forget. The plane had crashed with its tanks full, ready for an intercontinental flight. That turned the impact into a living hell. The structure of the Boeing 787 broke apart upon hitting the ground, and the ensuing fire destroyed everything in its path. Although some witnesses ran to help, the heat was unbearable and the first rescue attempts were halted by the risk of secondary explosions. In just 4 minutes, the scene went from an ordinary day to a field of devastation. The sirens arrived quickly. Ambulances, firefighters, police. All of India held its breath, and the world began to ask an inevitable question: how could this have happened? Meghani Nagar, a residential neighborhood just minutes from Ahmedabad airport, was having an ordinary day. Children playing, adults coming home from work, street vendors offering chai. No one could have imagined that in a matter of seconds, the sky would come crashing down on them. At 1:43 in the afternoon, 4 minutes after flight AI171 took off, a deafening noise tore through the air. It wasn't the usual sound of a plane coming in to land. It was a sharp, brutal impact, followed by a deafening explosion that made windows shake more than a kilometer away. A neighbor described it like this: it was as if thunder had exploded right above us. Everything turned orange and then black. The plane didn't explode when it hit the ground. It exploded from the inside because of the more than 100,000 liters of fuel in its tanks. Fire engulfed everything. The flames reached more than 10 meters high. The fuselage broke apart into multiple sections, some pieces embedded in nearby structures, others wrapped in fire. Just 2 minutes after the impact, the entire neighborhood was a scene of horror. People were running, trying to put out fires with buckets of water, covering burned victims with blankets. There was no silence. Only screams. Screams for help, of panic, of helplessness. One of the first to arrive was a mechanic who worked less than a block away from the site. His account was broadcast by all the media. "I saw parts of the plane. My God, I didn't know what to do. I tried to go into a burning house, but the heat threw me back. I burned my arms. I just wanted to get someone out." The rescue teams took just 9 minutes to arrive, but the magnitude of the fire made it difficult for them to get in. The pavement was melting. The smoke made it hard to see. An improvised green corridor was created, with ordinary citizens transporting the injured on motorcycles, private cars, even carts. The area was completely sealed off. The airport suspended all its operations. Firefighters, medical personnel, and security forces took control of the perimeter. Drones flew over the area searching for pieces of the fuselage that could help identify the causes of the accident. By late afternoon, the first numbers were confirmed. At least 30 dead, more than 50 injured, many of them in critical condition. The numbers were updated every hour, and the count kept rising. In a matter of minutes, Meghani Nagar went from being an anonymous neighborhood to becoming the epicenter of a national tragedy. Mechanical failure? Flight AI171 was not just any aircraft. It was a Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner, one of the most modern planes in the world, a technological marvel designed for efficiency, safety, and long-range travel. A giant with over $186 million in cutting-edge engineering. So, the question isn't just why it fell, but how it was even possible for it to fall. From the very first hours after the accident, India's Directorate General of Civil Aviation deployed a team of experts, along with Boeing investigators and international representatives. The goal was clear: to find answers. And fast. But when it comes to air tragedies, answers usually arrive shrouded in silence and, often, in conflict. One of the main lines of investigation points to a possible catastrophic technical failure in the flight control systems or the engines. Although the Boeing 787 has multiple electronic redundancies, the model has historically carried certain issues since its introduction in 2011. Among them are overheating of lithium-ion batteries in earlier models, reports of abnormal vibrations in the Rolls-Royce Trent 1000 engines, minor failures in altitude sensors, and navigation software glitches. What's disturbing is that, according to preliminary reports, the plane began to lose altitude abruptly just seconds after reaching 3,000 feet, which would indicate a sudden and uncontrollable failure. Some experts believe it could have been a double flameout, a simultaneous loss of power in both engines, something very rare, but not impossible. Human error. The second hypothesis centers on a possible human error in the cockpit. Although the pilots in command, Captain Sumeth Sawarwal and First Officer Clive Kunder, were experienced, the voice recordings from the black box, which are still being recovered and analyzed, could reveal whether there were any wrong decisions made in the face of an unexpected emergency. External factors? Even though the weather was stable, unexpected external factors have not been ruled out. Some reports mention the possible collision with birds, a bird strike, or even the obstruction of air intakes to the engines, which could have affected thrust. Another point of concern: the weight of the plane. It was loaded with enough fuel for more than 8 hours of flight, the luggage of 230 passengers, and a full crew. If there was an imbalance in the distribution of the load, a sudden depressurization, or a landing gear failure, the disaster could have unfolded in seconds. And what about the Boeing 787? Is it really that safe? The Dreamliner, up until this accident, had never recorded a death on a commercial flight. In theory, it was one of the safest planes ever built. But that record has been broken, and with it, the trust of thousands of passengers. This accident has forced Boeing to reopen its technical review protocols, and a wave of inspections is expected worldwide. There is public pressure, media pressure, and above all, pain, because when a symbol of safety fails, the wound goes beyond the technical. It's emotional, it's cultural, it's human. The crash of Flight AI171 didn't just shake India, it echoed around the world, because when a Dreamliner crashes, it's not just a plane going down, it's the credibility of an entire industry that's called into question. Hours after the accident, the Prime Minister of India gave a public statement, his face visibly shaken. He confirmed the tragedy, declared 3 days of national mourning, and pledged to investigate to the fullest extent. Today, India is one of the fastest-growing nations in terms of air traffic. Millions of people fly every month, driven by an emerging economy and affordable fares. But this accident has once again brought an uncomfortable question to the table. Is India's aviation infrastructure ready for that growth? This is not the first time that the quality of maintenance at certain airlines has been called into question. Despite having an active Directorate General of Civil Aviation, it has at times been criticized for rushed inspections or a lack of thorough technical oversight. Now, under international pressure, all of Air India's Boeing 787s are being inspected one by one, and other airlines in the region could be added to the list. Additionally, although the Ahmedabad airport is modern, it will undergo a full audit. They will assess whether there were failures in the emergency response system, in the control tower, or in the flight authorization procedures. A structural review of the national protocol for takeoffs on intercontinental routes is not even being ruled out. For Boeing, this accident has been devastating, not only because of the human tragedy, but also because the 787 Dreamliner was their flagship for safety and efficiency. After the scandals involving the 737 MAX, which was grounded for over a year, the 787 had helped restore some of the trust in the brand. Every air tragedy, as painful as it may be, leaves lessons, changes protocols, modifies designs, and saves future lives. It is expected that, as a result of AI171, emergency manuals for long-haul flights, pre-flight technical inspections, public transparency of maintenance reports, and above all, the psychological training of pilots in the face of sudden failures will all be reviewed. Because in the coming months, every takeoff from Ahmedabad and from anywhere in the world will carry the memory of this flight, the unanswered questions, the lives cut short, and the shared responsibility to prevent this from happening again. In a world obsessed with speed, comfort, and efficiency, modern aviation has achieved the unthinkable, uniting continents in hours, moving millions of people every day, connecting lives. And yet, every now and then, reality forces us to come to a sudden stop, to look at things with our feet on the ground, to remember that progress, like everything in life, comes at a price. The tragedy of Flight AI171 was not just an accident. It was a crack in the illusion of invulnerability that we have built around aviation. For decades, we have been taught that flying is safe, and it is. Statistically, it's much safer than driving. That's why this shouldn't just be another case filed away in aviation history. It should mark a before and after. And because behind every takeoff, there's someone waiting on the ground. This has been the story of Air India Flight AI171. A journey that should never have ended this way.